Hello everybody, welcome back. And in today's video, we're going to discuss another very important endgame topic called the opposition. Now, the concept of opposition is very important to understand because almost every single king and pawn endgame uses this concept, and they will not make sense to you if you don't understand. So, the opposition is defined by Jeremy Silman in his book Silman's Complete Endgame Course, and he says that it is when two kings struggle for dominance. I'll show you what he means by that later. So in the position, as you can see, the squares d5, e5, and f5 are being contested by both kings. And if you're white, you want to move your king to those squares. If you're black, you also want to move your king to those squares. And in the position, it's white to move. Whatever white plays, he will lose control of one of those squares, and thus he is losing the opposition. So for example, if he plays king to d4, it gives away control of f5, and black can play king f5. If you play king f4, black can play king d5. And so, as you can see, whatever white plays, he is going to lose control of one of those squares. And thus, black's king becomes more dominant than white's king. So basically, whoever it is to move in this position has a less dominant king than the other person. And let's just see how this can be used in practical examples. So now I've loaded up the first practical example, and in this position it's black to play. Obviously you're playing for a draw here, and you basically want to prevent white's king from aiding his pawn to the queen. Black's king's role is to basically prevent white from advancing too far. So the best move is king to e7. Moving diagonally with king f7 technically also works, but in a little bit it won't work, and I'll show you why. Thing is king f5, and now white has the opposition, black loses it, and it's technically still a draw, but in a while you'll see why it doesn't work. So king e7, king f5, and king f7. Now since it's white to play, black has the opposition. You shouldn't really play things like king to d7 because king f6 allows white to step in front of the pawn, and now after moves like king to e8 trying to defend against king f7, the thing is king e6 now forces black to step out because now he loses the opposition with king to d8 and now king f7, and the pawn will easily queen because all three of the squares along its path are protected by white's king. So when black played king to f7, he has the opposition, and really the only way to make progress is to play e6, because on king g5 you just have king to e6, and if you defend the pawn, king e7, king f5, king f7 results in the same position we just had 3 moves earlier. So e6, king to e7. You should really step in front of the pawn when you can, just to make it a little more difficult on the opponent. King e5, and now it's important that you step one square back with king to e8. Do not play king f8 moving diagonally, because now after king f6, black loses the opposition, and after king e8, e7, and now every other square but d7 is covered, and king f7, and now the pawn can safely promote. So it's important you play king e8, because on king d6, king d8, and this maintains opposition for black, and now it's white to move. He has to play e7, and now king e8, and now white's faced with an unpleasant decision. Either you stalemate him with king to e6, or you move out and give up the pawn. So this is how you should use the opposition to defend against inferior positions. And now I'll load up one more practical example. So now I've loaded up the final practical example, and here it's black to play. And he must give way to white's king with king f5. If it was white to move here, the situation would be different because now black has the opposition, and white must play something like king f3, and after king f5, black still maintains opposition. Only real winning shot might be e4, but after king e5, king e3, we have our position from our previous example. I will flip the board just so you guys can see. So yeah, basically the same thing. So king f5 was played because it's black to move, and now it gives up d4, so white takes advantage of it. And after king to e6, this is necessary to prevent things like king d5, which gain more space, so that's why you shouldn't play king f6 because of king d5, king 6. Now king e4, still maintaining opposition for white, and now black must give up more squares with king to d6, and that gives up f5. King to e7. If you try a plan like king to d5, which basically goes for king d4 to e3, which tries to win the pawn. The thing is, e4 wins the game for white, because after king d6 you have king f6, and after something like king d7 you can play e5, because on king e8 there's king e6. And now, since it's black to play, he must give up one of these two crucial squares and allow white's king to advance there, and now the pawn has a safe promoting path. So king f5 and king e7 was played, not king d5. And now there are two winning ways here. One of them is king to e5. The other way is actually e3, because you don't want to play e4 because this is a draw now, because king f7 maintains opposition for black, and after e5, king e7, and now we have the position from our previous example. I'll flip the board once again, just so you guys can see. So yeah, and this is a draw. But on e3, king f7, e4, this is different because now it's black to play, and he loses the opposition after king e7 and king e5. So this is winning for white. But king e5 is another way. King f7, king to d6, and king e8. Again, if you try something like king f6, trying to run up the board and win the pawn, the thing is e4. Covers this square, and there's no way to run up. So king e8 was played, and now king to e6. Maintaining opposition again. After king f8, now you can advance the pawn, because now white still has the opposition. And after king f8, king to d7 immediately wins the game for white. I hope this video helps you understand the concept of opposition, and also helps you understand some basic king and pawn endgames. I'll catch you all next time. Goodbye.